Hey, hello everyone. Welcome to the Jann Arden podcast. I'm here with Caitlin Green, Sarah Burke, and welcome back, the New York Times bestselling author. It's the quintessential bar to which authors want to get on that list, and you have been on it so many goddamn times. Please welcome friend of the Jann Arden podcast show,
Yes,
Adriana Trigiani, who is back with a brand new book. I believe it's either 20 or 21. Adri, it's like 20 or 21. 21, called
21.
The View from Lake Como. If you do not have your toes shoved into the sand with some kind of a drink in your hand reading this book, you are out of your goddamn mind. Welcome.
Welcome to you, to Caitlin, and to Sarah. I love you girls so much. I couldn't wait to come back. And I listened to our last interview. You know, I listen to your podcast all the time because I get a lot of tips for life from it. I really do. It's like I'm with my friends. And
well, you know what? Lord knows we try.
You've perfected it. We're all just handmaidens in the court of Jann Arden. Let's face it.
God, speaking of handmaidens, like right out of the gate, Adria, I just want to say, bless your hearts in New York City. You guys are the forefront of the resistance.
Yes.
And I would be remiss if we didn't have a predominant American citizen like yourself comment on the vibe in the US of A. How's it going?
Have faith in the American people.
Okay.
I have faith in the people. I have always had faith in the people. It doesn't waver. You know, we're in show business, so we never blame the audience. We always go inward and we say to ourselves, hey, I didn't get that right tonight. I'm going to get it better tomorrow. This is the vibe of the American people. And please know I'm from Appalachia, which is very red. I live in a blue state. I fly purple. I go everywhere. And I think one of the things that I hope people will continue to do, because we're beginning to understand the importance of everybody is equal and everybody should have the same rights. It's in our Constitution, okay? Now, I just got honored at Ellis Island, which I cried my way through, which is why now it's triggered my sweat glands and I'm sweating like an animal. I cried so much. My sister, I have one sister who's an attorney, and she raised a glass and remembered our parents that night because it's this beautiful thing. Immigrant is a word of honor in my home, and I grew up, and the word immigrant to me was the most beautiful word in the English language, and certainly in the Italian American canon, immigrant. It's just beautiful. So here's what I'm going to tell you. We love our Canadian brothers and sisters. We have lived in peace and harmony and mutual work together for many, many years. I cannot imagine American show business or literature or any of the imports that you've given to us that are not like dazzling and important. You're peace-loving, good people. You love your animals. You love your friends. You love your families. You're just the best people in the world. And this will work out because people, when the people speak, and the people own their place and they don't get busy and ignore what's going on, all will be well. Keep the faith.
Keep the faith. Thank you. And that's all we need to say about that because we got books to talk about. Mm-hmm. I think people like you always give me faith. And the arts give me faith. And the creative soul gives me faith because I feel like no matter what has ever happened to us in history, it is the creators, people that can sit down, get their heart and their soul into a book like The View from Lake Como and go, yeah, I can forget about the world for 10, 11, 12 hours. I can just have my tea, my coffee, and I can submerge myself in this book. So let's talk about it. The first thing I want to say this man's name because when I Capo de Monte Barata. Capo de Monte Barata.
Perfetto.
Perfect. I mean, these names, first of all, I want to ask you, when you write a book, I'm always so curious how authors go into naming characters. And is there any family, hookups? Are these people that you know?
Yes, these are people I know, and they're people that I love. So when I get to spend a couple years with them in the belly of the beast and tell a story, I am in bliss. Now it's a lot of work, as you know, I hope we're going to get more from the Biddlemores coming soon. I get invested in characters, and I get it like I get to people like you ladies. You get invested in them. And this lady is a really interesting cat because when this book opens, she's like living in the basement. She's in the crapper. Okay, she just is. She left her
She's
husband.
living in her. She's living in her parents' basement.
She's literally living where they keep the lawn equipment and the mason jars and the spiders, the spideys, Jesus. And it's freezing cold down there. And they put a bed and a kitchen in. Big deal. It's still the basement, and there's no light. And I learned living submerged in the earth that you can't live like that. It ruins you. You got to have light. And it's my number one tip. I mean, you got to sit outside. My grandmother from Italy on the Iron Range of Minnesota, one town over from Bob Dylan's town, Hibbing, Chisholm, Minnesota. She didn't care if there was a blizzard. She bundled up, went out in the sun, and put her face to the sun every day for 15 minutes. You got to have light. You got to have light. Put your sunscreen on, whatever you do, but you got to have that go through your retina. It's illuminata. It lights up your soul. So when I do these worlds, I'm thinking, how am I going to bring you the story of a life that's going to matter in yours? And I found as this character, Giuseppina Capodimonte Barata Balancia. I know it's a mouthful. And by the way, Oprah just said, somebody was on Oprah's podcast and they just said, geez, these big names. Well, too bad. You're going to read them in my book. But her nickname's Jess, which helps everybody. Name's Jess Barata. Okay, so.
Is Barata the cheese? Is this named after the cheese?
No. Barratta. And that's
not burrata.
Yeah, this is Barata. So there, I don't know if you know this, but there's a great decorator whose last name is Barata, Anthony Barata, and his family, and they're from Rosetta, Pennsylvania. And I always wanted to honor him. He was a professor at Fordham, so that's where I got that name. Balancia, I learned when I was in Italy. I liked it. I liked the name Balancia. I thought it was beautiful. And Capodimonte is, as a surname, it's those lamps with the little tiny flowers and the little cherubs on them and stuff. That's Capodimonte ceramics. And I thought I wanted something that shattered like marble if you hit it wrong. So that's where that name came from. And Giuseppina is my great-grandmother's name because this book is a modern retelling of her story.
So just for people listening today, right away my mind, when I started reading like the pre-press for this book, which I'm very excited about, I'm thinking, ooh, Lake Como. I was there and no, Jan, it's Lake Como, New Jersey, for Christ's sakes. Like, come on. It's a far cry from being, in a
Yeah, but you do get to the other one. You do get to the other one, but okay. but I purposely said it in winter. Yeah, I put her there in the winter on that lake because that's where they hid the Queen Catherine. They hid her on Lake Como. You remember that story? And Hannibal's elephants came over the Alps. But I like Italy in winter, so I brought you that. I know that's a little cuckoo because it's a summer
we don't
book.
hear much about Italy in winter.
You really don't, but that's when I love it. Nobody's there but us.
That's when I'm going to go. I'm going to go back and goddamn wherever the winter is. Where do these things start? So 21 books in, they are still as fresh and as vibrant. The stories are so alive. The pre-press, the things that have been written about this are just as crisp and as present as they were with Big Stone Gap. People are raging about your storytelling, the dialogue in these books, how real it is, how real it reads. Like you get in 50, 60 pages, you're done. You're now on the story. And you said an interesting thing a few minutes ago. How am I going to make this book matter in your life? And I'm hoping you can expand on that a little bit because I love that. There's so many choices out there. How do you make what you're writing, your story, matter in my life, in Caitlin's life, in Sarah's life?
Well, just what we're doing. I talk to people, women, a lot of women. I do talk to men too, but I'm very interested in the life of a woman. Like, let me just throw this out. I noticed this. We had the Me Too movement. Let's just take the chunk of recent history. We had the Me Too movement, which was very effective. the next thing you hear is these intellectuals come out with their books about we're leaving boys behind. We're leaving boys. Are we? Really? Really? The minute you address a woman's trajectory and power in this world, we have to pay for it. We have to pay for it. So I wanted to write a character, and I found it in my own family, of a woman who did everything she was told to do until the trust was breached. And when the trust was breached at the age of 34, she pulls it together and gets out of the basement based on a tragedy. Her uncles left her the marble, the importing company. She's a draftsman. And the draftsman is really, her job always was a sidekick to her Uncle Louis. So right there in the family, you have somebody in the family business in a second position at the age of 34 who does all the practical work, and Uncle Louis is the boss and does the flash, the storytelling. And I love him as a character, and she learns from him. But when she has a reckoning with herself, hey, if I keep going down this path, I'm never out of that basement. She's got to get out. And this is why I wrote this book. Because when you make the decision, the next thing that follows is the plan to get out, which takes you through. And when she commits to the plan to open up her life without any idea where it's going to go, she knows part of that she's got to go back to the start. What happened to me in this family as a girl, now a woman? What happened? I don't want to end up like the woman I'm named for, who she never met, who was the maiden aunt. And she sees herself falling into that. She's babysitting her brother and sister's kids. She's driving the parents to their medical appointments. They're turning 70. They're starting to fall apart. She sees the handwriting on the wall. She's going to be 50 years old and bury them. And what becomes of her? This was from this is my 25th anniversary as an author. 25 years of being on the road talking to women. That's what this is. This is my love letter to you to say it's never too late. Own it and decide what it is you're going to do. Let me say this. Jan, we had a conversation that fed into this book when I was last on the pod with you ladies, your pod. And you were talking about your upbringing. And I told you I'm a Jan fan. And through Nigel, introduced me to you. I read books. I listened to the music. How does a kid on really a desolate farm situation, small town, made fun of at school, how does she become a person of the Legion of Honor of Canada and an international artist and sensation? This is interesting to me, because knowing you just turned your light on and you said, this is what it's going to be, folks. This is how I'm going to do it. And then you had the guts to write a novel. This is what this book says to women is, what is it you want to do and how you're going to make it happen? And I had fun with it. You know, she's on online therapy. Okay, there's hysterical stuff here. I did online therapy as not myself to just hear what it was. And then I created
you did it in real life to have some background for the character.
I called myself Alexandra, which is what my father wanted to name me. But then he named me Adriana, which I'm glad, because I love that name. Now, I didn't like it as a kid. I thought, I hated it.
So you went online and did therapy, which is we're looking at a sponsor that's going to be doing some online
I had
therapy.
a sponsor on my pod.
Let me guess.
Get them.
BetterHelp. Let me guess.
BetterHelp was they were on my pod. They sponsored me. Okay.
Yeah.
So I thought, what is it? And they gave you free things. So I said, I'll take it.
So and this is where you did the therapy, through BetterHelp.
Yeah. Through BetterHelp.
And then I learned
that. It's so good. Now I created something because, I didn't want to just take their idea. That's not good. So my therapy is that she doesn't know when she signs up that it's a different therapist every week. So this week it's Dr. Bob, then it's Dr. Amanda, then it's Dr. Jackie. I mean, it's like, and so when she dares to sign up for it and she slams her computer down and goes, oh my gosh, the lid of her laptop, and goes, oh, I can't do this every week. But then she gives into it, and she's just asked through this therapist the major questions. Now, women let others not only shape the questions, but answer them. Because once you have children, or you don't, let's just say you don't have kids, that's as big a commitment as having them.
Thank you.
Because you're saying, yeah, but Jan, we can't count you. You raised your sibs. I mean, like everybody raises kids. It's a woman. I don't care who you are. There's a kid down the street, you bring him oranges. I know what goes on, okay? But I'm saying in specificity here, when is it your life? When is it your life? And what moment does that happen? Now, for Jess, there's a breach. She finds out something that's so terrible that that caused her the greatest pain in her life, and changed the course of her life. Now she's got to get it back on track. So you see, this came from recognizing exactly what actually is going on in the lives of women. And it's a hard road. So all those book authors that write about boys being behind, I'd like you to listen, because your boys win when your girls win. If the girls don't win, the boys continue on this track. How can the boys
win? Yeah.
They're not going to win. So if you want that to be fixed, stop tripping us every time we get somewhere. The Me Too movement is a perfect example of that, you know. Oh, the bite of the Me Too. Yeah, because you want to continue your bad behavior. And very often your criminal behavior. You want to continue that because it worked for you for centuries.
Caitlin has a question. I can sense it.
Hi. I'm kind of curious because obviously you're such a avid writer and reader, and you're so enthusiastic about books, but I do feel like there has been sort of a decline in interest in books and reading amongst younger people that coincides directly with the rise in screens and time spent on screens. I mean, I'm guilty of it myself. And, you know, you're on the New York Council of the Arts. So what do you think we can do to get people, specifically young people, interested in reading? Like, how do we make that?
Okay, Caitlin, don't hate me. And I'm about to disagree with you.
Okay. Good. Please prove me wrong.
I'm about to, no. I know you want to be proved wrong, but I have to tell you that the marketplace in books, first of all, it's a very healthy industry. It generates billions of dollars in the United States, and that's just my country. Okay, around the world, it's even, you know, when you do an aggregate, it's insane. And driving the market at the top of the charts always, I believe, is the younger reader. There's two things that happen. It's the younger reader. Right now, romanticy. Sarah Moss, Rebecca Yarros, they're delicious writers. You know, I could keep going. Colleen Hoover, Taylor Jenkins Reid. It's not romanticy. It's the well-told tale.
Romanticy? I've never even frickin' heard romanticy before.
It's like,
but anyways.
It's like Sex with Dragons. That's the joke line. But it's also, you know, I see this also in young women. You know, whatever's happening with the boys is a separate conversation. Let's focus on the young women. It's very hard for them to find suitable partners. So, the fact that the boys don't seem to measure up, send me mail, but and I see it a little bit differently, you know, but it also correlates with the fact that more women are being college educated, and it's exceeding the numbers of the boys.
Yeah.
So that's an issue. Geez, I hope I'm answering your question. Oh, about the young reader. They're gobbling these books up, and Book Talk is driving the sales.
Mm-hmm.
There's a beautiful author named Madeline Miller who wrote a book called Circe. She's superb. She's a TikTok sensation. Taylor Jenkins Reid and the Seven Wives of Evelyn Hugo, that was a TikTok-driven success story. So right now, Caitlin, the young women are they're fueling the marketplace. Now, you still have your superstar authors, Stephen King, of the last 50 years. You still have that. And isn't that fabulous that an author has, David Baldacci, that they have sustained themselves. I'll get to the women that have sustained themselves for many, many, many years. So the point of the book business to me, why I do a podcast, and I know partially why you all do a podcast, is to get people more engaged in the arts, to get them in there. Now,
Definitely.
as my role at the New York State Council on the Arts, we have an excellent governor here, Kathy Hochul, who Canadians know because we border you, Northern New York. And she has been superb in my time. It started out with Andrew Cuomo. That administration put me in, and now I'm with Kathy Hochul's administration. And it wouldn't matter what the party was. We are independent citizens who come in to help. And Kathy Hochul saw a need to renovate, refurbish, and redo the theaters, the dance studios, and the rehearsal spaces in the state of New York. And that's one of the projects that we undertook. So you get a good governor who loves the arts. I remember back in the day in Minnesota, they called her Joan of Arts, the first lady over there. Now, you think I could remember her husband's name? Somebody's going to write in and tell me I'm an idiot.
We don't need to remember his name.
We don't remember the name. But my point is that from the volunteer level to the top, there's a cohesion. And it's incumbent upon everybody to be involved in these organizations so that you have a say in it and you can push agendas. Meaning, and when I say push agendas, it's to get kids to read, to celebrate reading books to them. They say that if you read to your kid or your niece, your nephew, the neighbor's kid, if you read to them every day, they will get on the path to higher education. And that's what we want. Even if you become an electrician, which is a noble profession, I'm a working class person. If you work in a factory, education, because poetry needs to be in the hands of the working people. And if we put out the meal, they will eat it. Caitlin.
I'm going to just be the devil's advocate here because they're saying, and I just read this op-ed piece and it escapes me where I read it from, but I was shocked to learn that teenagers in their late teens, 17, 18, 19, are not reading the way they did even 5 or 6 years ago because of social media, because of TikTok. The irony isn't lost on me that TikTok is driving book sales and driving readership. And yet TikTok is also taking kids that are a little bit older and stealing them from that cradle of people that are reading. I think they may return to it once they do the boyfriend, girlfriend hormone, whatever it is that's happening in that 3 or 4 years. Well, I'm just saying that I was kind of disheartened to hear that the readership, and I think it was based on library card memberships and things like that, and it was an American study. Can you speak to that, or is that just something that is one person's opinion and it's actually not the facts?
That will have some factual basis. But
okay.
Again, it's a hurdle. It's not a reality forever. Okay. I was just talking with Sarah Jessica Parker and her mother, who's an educator out at Adelphi
I'm not familiar
University.
with her. I've never heard of Sarah Jessica Parker.
She okay. I'm quoting.
Hi, Sarah.
Yeah, we're walking right in, Sarah Jessica. We're walking right into this one.
Yeah,
you have to have her on this pod. She's erudite.
We'd love that.
She's a reader, and she now is a publisher, and has her own imprint at Zando Books called SJP Lit. I'm just filling in the blank here so everybody thinks, oh, Carrie Bradshaw, which, by the way, is also based on a novel by Candace Bushnell. So we're book savvy here. We're all books. But she pointed out something about the public library, which is she's very supportive of them, and so am I. My mother was a librarian. Her mother's an educator. And she said that public library is the first place you should take your children when they're little. Now, Lucia, my kid, because she grew up in New York City, we were at the library every time it rained. And there's libraries like on every corner of New York City. They're in subway areas. You can always duck into a library. And this was Sarah Jessica's conviction. So you make a habit of the playground and you make a habit of the library. And the more we do this, even our school libraries, they're really important. And you might say, geez, I don't have kids. How can I help? Go read to kids at the library. There's like so many things we can do to change the trajectory of the phones. But I want to point this out because my grandmother, who was born in 1907, Viola Perrine Trigiani, was a car buff. Do you know when cars first came in, people were building them in their backyards, and people thought it was the end of the line. People will never walk, they'll never run, they'll never ride horses, the car will become the thing. So they became obsessive about building their own cars. Imagine this. Would any of us attempt that? Of course not. This thing is causing a technological revolution, and there will be problems that come from it. But it's important for us to frame it for young people. We have interns in our office. They're the most well-read people I've ever seen. They're 21, 22, 23. So you're right, Jan. There's pockets sometimes where kids are left behind, but I'm not too worried about that either. I'm really not.
Yeah, I love that because
now the movie business. Now that's a different conversation because now we're watching it on here.
Yeah.
So, and then we had this pandemic that's isolated us in silos. Mm-hmm. And now we're coming out of the dark and we're connecting again and coming together in community because it's important to experience art in community. Jan, you could do Zoom concerts till you're blue in the face. But is there anything like a theater full of people screaming?
Nothing like it.
There you go.
I was going to bring up this community thing because I think that's where people return from maybe the teen era where they lose books. When they find community again and the things that people in their community are talking about, I feel like book clubs are really hot again. Just saying.
They are.
Like,
we have one.
Yeah, we have one. And I mean, like, obviously.
I'll join.
But do you have one? Do you have one with your podcast?
I consider my podcast the book club.
Yeah.
No,
because I have to read the book.
Yeah,
and talk to the people. I'm going to have Christy Brinkley on. If you'd have told me 5 years ago I'd be talking to a model who's written a memoir, I'd be like, I'm not doing that. But it's riveting. Yeah. And she's really smart. And she's really interesting. And I went, shame on me. And I'm going to own it with her. I'm just going to say, hey, really, initially I thought, really? But it's a magnificent memoir. It's magnificent. So, see, books, they crack you open. They crack you open when you least expect it. Yeah, totally. I mean, Demon Copperhead, Barbara Kingsolver, from Appalachia. She lives in Appalachia. I just went down to celebrate her heart project, which is the opening of this drug treatment facility. She took the profits from Demon Copperhead and did residential drug treatment facility in Lee County, Virginia, where the book is set. Okay, that's 5 miles from where I grew up. But this is the kind of stuff books do. This international sensation gave her the jet fuel to do something. I idolize her as a writer and as a human being. Yeah. But I'm just saying to you, I think
that's another one of those female authors that's omnipresent. Barbara
Kingsolver, the great Barbara Kingsolver.
And even if you don't think you've read Kristen Hanna,
dear friend who I hope you all meet someday. I hope you meet Barbara.
I saw you interview her. I saw your interview with Kristen Hanna. I loved it, and I loved how down to earth she was, and how she spoke about writing. So anyone that is not familiar with her, I mean, if the women, for example,
women, please, the Vietnam War.
And you wouldn't even think the women as the Vietnam War as a backdrop, but you have to read any of her books, and her female characters are so broken but so heroic and so imperfect. Like they're always heartbreaking, but you always come away learning from something. And that's what you write about too. These female characters, you always learn. Listen, if she can pick herself up, I can too. And that's that connector once again.
Exactly. And this is my log line for it. A woman's life falls apart, and she rebuilds her life and the house that goes with it.
Ooh. Yeah, there's
Live where you want to live.
yeah.
Be who you are. Who you are has never happened in the history of the world, and it never will again. Women tend to like stay in because they don't want to be any trouble and they don't want to make any noise. But we must. And you know, everything will come to you that you deserve when you own your life. I'm not going to say it's going to be perfect or easy. It never is. This is life. I don't know if this is purgatory. I can't wait to get to the other side to figure this out, because I find this whole thing just crazy. Like, are you kidding me? Why do we have to endure this? The tragedy, the suffering of people. It's very hard to understand. I try and I work on it through a lens of faith in one another, the God light in everybody, you know. And then you've got people who have co-opted that. But I think this woman, and I think every life, and I don't care what book we're talking about, it's a faith journey. It's a journey of the soul.
And faith isn't always about religion either. I think people get so caught up on,
that's right.
You know, we see this right wing sort of Christianity that it has no more to do with kindness and generosity as a volcano. And it's you know, faith for me, because I'm not a particularly religious person, but I have a lot of faith in something really wonderful and a power and a presence in my life, whether it's a God type of a thing. Like, I don't know. I can't sit here and tell you I know anything about anything, but I'm not alone.
The creative act is an act of faith.
Yes.
The creative act is an act of faith. There's two forces on the planet, creativity and destruction. You pick. You pick which side you're on. And to bring people together, to connect with them, just what we're doing right now. This is a deep act of faith. We're counting on that what we're saying is reaching people and connecting them to a wider world. That's what you're doing, Jann, and that's what you do with your writing and your music. I mean, this is like, when we start doing this, and Caitlin, Sarah, sure, it's an act of connection. Creativity is faith. It is that. So the religiosity part of it, you know, look, I'm Catholic. I will die a Catholic because of the breaking of the bread. I've written about it in novels. There's a lot of sex and fun in my novels too, because I think that's creative acts. But I'm just saying that, to me, that's what makes us fully human, and that taps our divinity to love, to connect. So you don't have to be in a particular building for that. It's an act of faith to create. It's an act of faith. You as a creator are counting on the connection, because why else do this?
We said that on the show a bunch. Is like, we're always like, oh, when we get voice note, when we have people leave us voice notes, we're like, oh, it's so
very
nice.
Emotional.
It makes us emotional because we're like, oh yeah, because we're really just talking to each other because we like it and we're passionate about certain topics or guests or whoever. And then you kind of lose track of the fact that, oh yeah, people are listening to you. You're their friend in their ears. You keep them company throughout their day. And you're right. You are putting a lot of faith in, like, gee, I hope people like this and don't think we're idiots.
Yes. But I read the comments last time, and I read them whenever I listen to the podcast. Your listeners have a hunger for that connection and creativity. They have a hunger for it.
Yeah,
this is why I don't worry. Yeah, that's right. That's why I don't worry about the kids. They're all right. They'll get there when they get there. Listen, a lot of people spend 5-6 years eating potato chips, and then they need a salad. They need some broccoli. They need to eat something that's going to make them feel better. Okay? Ain't nothing wrong with a potato chip. I defy you to find a more delicious treat on the planet than a potato chip.
There isn't one.
Why? They haven't invented it. You know, you can eat at the fanciest restaurants in the world, and I always go like this. Now, is this as good as a potato chip? Not sure. I am not sure.
Shit.
With all the
It's
sauce
so
and the
true.
steam and the and they go, a Ruffles potato chip's just as good as this. Not better. Yeah. Interesting.
the simple things.
And once again, it brings you back to the simple things that, you can try and overlook them if you want to, and you can, be sitting on that yacht. And I'll tell you what, if you're sitting on a yacht by yourself looking at the ocean, you will not enjoy it. You might enjoy it for 10 minutes, and then you will be craving the company of a loved one, the company of a friend that you can say, "Oh my God, Sheila, look at the seagull." Like, when life is about sharing experiences. And
a yacht, no matter what you do, I don't care how many throw pillows you put in the poop deck, how you gloss it up, and what celebrities you put on it, it still smells like seawater and wee-wee.
Yeah.
No matter what. I'd rather be with my friends. I'd rather be with my friends having a hamburger.
I'd rather be in a dinghy.
Vegetarian
I'd rather be in a freaking
a little dinghy.
Paddling around with
a little skiff.
Exactly. I spent my childhood building rafts that never floated. My dad was like, "Why the hell are you using my goddamn good wood?" We figured wood floated. We'd build these things and nail them together 2x4s and 2x6s and rope, and we'd have like rubber tires that were not the inserts of the rubber tire. They were the actual fucking rubber tire that no more floated than a goddamn rock did. And we'd push them out after building these things for 8 hours, and they just would go glug, 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 and they'd sink to the bottom of the pond. We'd stand there looking at my dad's good wood sinking to the bottom of the pond.
My God. But
the afternoon,
you're telling on yourself. You were building a vehicle to get you going, to get you somewhere, to transport you. You built a boat. And I want you to really think about that. That's what you've done your whole life. You want to get on with it. Get on the plane, the train. That's right. We're trying to get somewhere because something in the human spirit tells us to get somewhere is to see things differently. To see things differently. Illuminata, we call it. The light. When you tour or you go someplace or you travel, that's why I'm always fascinated with vacation.
Caitlin's our traveler. Actually, Caitlin and Sarah both are. They travel like crazy, and it's a big part of our show talking about Caitlin loves going to the eastern townships in Quebec, and she writes like the most amazing reviews, and it's so tactile. You can just taste where she's been.
Wow.
And Sarah just came back from somewhere the hell in Italy, so it's like I'm always so inspired by their travels and where they've been, because they come back differently.
Yeah, you come back refreshed, renewed, with the unlined face of supermodel, because you've gone inward. All the stuff we put on our faces and stuff that it's really about the soul.
Yeah,
it really is. Every human problem can be solved by going inward and connecting, which Caitlin, you just did in Italy, which Sarah, you do when you go to Quebec, wherever you're going.
Their way around, but same thing.
Yes.
Oh, it's the other way around.
The right location.
Yeah. Flipping Sarah had to. I'm just picking somebody who likes spaghetti and macaroni.
Exactly.
But
that'd be me.
You got it, Jann. That is like the overview, and that's the whole reason for me to read a novel. Now, I want to take me into your world and tell me how to do this better, or share it with me. I wish I could write a suspense novel.
You're one of the most supportive people. Well, you will write a suspense novel. I think you got so many things to tackle in your life, but you are one of the most supportive, artistic people I've ever met. And getting back to my friend and Audrey's friend, Nigel Stoneman, who's in the publishing business, and they met, years and years ago and became such good friends. But he has spoken so highly of you. And the greatest compliment with Nige, as you know, he said, "Jann, Adriana is one of us." She's one of us,
Oh.
which means salt of the earth, heart as big as the fucking Pacific Ocean, talented, funny, irreverent, like, can, poke fun at herself. And he's like, you guys have to meet someday. And then he arranged for you to be on the podcast, which I thought was so generous because
yes, so generous.
I said she would do
talking
that.
about you. Mm-hmm. Oh my God,
but
yes. He's been talking about you for years. And again, I was a Jann fan, but I have to say, this is like the biggest gift to me for us to be together, to do this.
Yeah.
This is what it's about.
But you are so like, where does that altruism come from? And were you always like that as a kid? Because in the arts, as you know, and the three of us have certainly experienced it, sometimes people don't want you to win. And
that's true.
It's such a weird concept
that's true.
of not wanting, I don't know. It's so bizarre to me because cheering somebody on is the most gracious act. And it just mirrors, it just comes back at you, that positivity. But some people want you to fail, and that's
okay. But you don't choose to be small because it makes somebody else comfortable. That's a mistake. Don't do it. And I always look at that. My dad said this, and it haunts me because he's in heaven now, where he said, "Hey, Adri, the insecure people are the dangerous ones." All that kind of backbiting, envy, and jealousy and stuff. One of the 7 deadly sins. All that is insecurity. That's all it is. And but when they try to hurt you, there's sometimes people try to hurt you and keep you back, hold you back, and don't support you. That's their problem. That's not yours. Stick with the people and meet new people that open up your world. Open it up.
And you continually do that, right? You just
I try really hard. Where does it come from? I think it comes from being the other in Appalachia, if I have to boil it down to a soup.
Okay.
We moved there. We were Italians. That's what we were called. We were the other. And I highly recommend being the other. And I think the 4 of us in our little squares here, we're the other. We know what it feels like to not be in the main on any level, whatever it is. And when you're the other, you either turn very bitter and hard, or you love with it and you start to see the other in others and go, oh, okay, I see that. I also think that it comes from being the middle kid in a big family.
Yeah.
I always, when we took car trips, I hated car trips. I can't stand to be confined. To this day, I can't stand it. It's like, how far is it? How far do I have to be in a car? I just hate it. Okay. And, but I do it because you have to if you want to get from A to B. Sometimes you got to drive a car, got to go somewhere, But I remember when we stopped in the 1970s, there was a restaurant called Howard Johnson's. That was throughout the United States. Don't eat the fried clams, but you stopped at Howard Johnson's, and my family with 7 children, we'd stop at Howard Johnson's, and there was my family all packed in at a table, 9 of us, little kids, my parents, and an old man walked in, and he sat down at the counter, and my little 5-year-old heart felt so bad for that guy that he was alone.
Aw.
And I've let that guide me. Don't leave anybody sitting at the counter. I'm not kidding. I was 5 years old. Well, I was just interested. I wanted to break out from the beginning. I wanted to be in show business. There was nobody in my family in show business. This was like crazy time. I had albums and things of my dad's that, he listened to, and that was a little show business. And then watching The Wizard of Oz every year, that was show business to me. And then we would be involved in community theater. That was show business to me. But it was that I was never in the group where I wasn't yearning to get to the next part of it, to get to the next part of the story. And that lonely old man, I think about him all the time. And he ordered something that I never ate in my life because he ordered it, and it upset me. He said, "I'll have the Salisbury steak, please."
Is that kind of like a glorified burger with gravy on it or something like that?
think
Like
so.
a
I think
ground
it's
chuck?
I think it's hamburger
Okay.
with mushrooms and maybe mushroom soup on it.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
never ate it. I never ate it because it
I don't
upset
blame
me.
you.
It's like a TV dinner, like a Hungry Man dinner is what I think.
Yeah, it's like a Hungry Man,
Yes.
except
yeah.
you're at Howard Johnson's,
Yeah.
and you
except
get
you're at a
ice cream
hotel.
at the end, so you could really eat anything as long as you get that scoop of
You
ice cream.
you are an individual that we could talk to. Like we could literally have you on here every week, and it would be like wisdom with Trigiani. Let's just do it. If you guys got problems, she's going to solve them for you. I want to talk about The View from Lake Como. You've got to read this book. It's book 21 from this amazing woman author. And for you ladies
Contemporary
out
comedy.
there, pick yourself up. Listen, Caitlin always asks, or we try to make sure that we get to this question. I'll hand it over to her because I think it really helps our listeners to figure out how we get through the hard stuff. So Caitlin, take it away.
Something you do to sort of take care of yourself, or how you help yourself unwind, or if you have a day off, that kind of thing.
Well, this is the thing that brings me the most comfort, is to get up early when the world is asleep. I'm in New York City. There is a few hours there in the wee hours of the morning. So I get up early and I make myself a delicious cup of coffee with half and half. And I raise the shade and I look out of my window in Greenwich Village. That restoreth my soul. That's
that simple gesture.
Yeah. That's it. Just me, the
ritual,
and the quiet.
The routine, you and the world, maybe somebody walking their dog by. And I'm sure, to me, that sounds like an amazing moment of gratitude to take in the stuff that you've accomplished. It's funny, and just one last little comment for me. Nigel often talks about your brownstone and sort of the history behind you getting into that building and just making it the home that you've made it. And maybe just finally, like, what is home to you?
Well, of course, it's the people I love first. But, I had a mother that loved her home in Big Stone Gap, Virginia. It was beautiful. What my mother did with very little. But she was an architecture librarian, and so she believed that you kept the house in the era that it's in. She didn't believe in tearing out the guts and having one. She was like, live in history. So I kind of have that gene. But Nigel came to visit. Nigel, whenever he comes over, would stay with me. And we had just moved upstairs the last time he was here. Because you know what a brownstone is. It's,
it's like four stories.
But it's nestled in between other buildings, and this one happens to get a lot of light. But we went through the whole house, and I said, Nigel, I want to take this wall out and move the bathroom. And he said, no. He said, that weird wall with the curve, you need it. It's part of this. It's this, like Mrs. Pigglewiggle's house. He said, those stairs that go like that, leave them. That's the personality of it. Nigel really taught me kind of that British sensibility about honoring history. And, in America, we're always ripping things out and putting it back in. And, it's crazy. But he taught me not to do that. And now, then when COVID hit, had I taken these walls out, they said the number one thing people craved during COVID was separation, boundaries. Like I'd go in a room and close a door. Yeah. I thought of Nigel every day during COVID because we didn't do it. So this house is 1838. Russell Baker lived here. Michael Patrick King lived here. Kevin Nealon lived here. No. Yeah, this house is like historical writer's house. So when you come, Jan, we'll do it top to bottom and we'll have a ball here.
Well, I would love that.
Too, Sarah and Caitlin.
It's our careful what you wish for. Tomorrow morning, ding dong, bing bong. Here we are.
You're always welcome here. And my husband, after almost 30 years of marriage, built me my library. So I have 2,000 books in the parlors, and including yours. And I love it. I love that I'm there with those books. So nice.
Yeah, it's one of the world's truly greatest inventions. I often wonder what burnt down in the Library of Alexandria all those thousands of years ago. I think about it daily, all the scrolls and the papyrus and the. Anyway, that's a whole other toy. Thank you for being on the podcast today. The new
My
book,
pleasure.
The View from Lake Como. Read it, get it. And also the other 20 books that Adriana has written in her life are all going to cheer you up, cheer you on, and make you feel like there's a lot of
I
hope in this
got it.
world.
I got to visit you in Canada. I got to come
And
up.
you are
Yeah,
welcome
we're
here
not
anytime.
coming there. You can come up here.
Well,
I know you come here, I'll come there. I you know, after we do these, the Canadian readers write to me. And I'm
Aw.
like, I am remiss, man. I have to get up there.
We're just
If I
not
get my
really
husband and we drive up.
visiting. Like
Yeah.
you know what's going on right
You're not too far from the girls, certainly in Toronto, but I'm quite fond of my neck of Canada, the western end. But anyway, thank you for doing the podcast today. We love you here. You're a friend of the show. You're welcome anytime. We're going to make sure that this book ends up in our book club so that our viewers can enjoy it as much as we have.
Love
and
it.
our listeners. But thanks for doing what you're doing. Keep creating, keep
Thank you.
inspiring.
Thank you.
And we will see you next time on the Jann
You
Arden
guys
podcast.
can't wait. And I can't wait to see you in New York. Love you guys. Beautiful.
Adriana Trigiani, our guest today. We will see you next time on the Jann Arden Pod. Till next time, toodly-doo.